Howdy ho. Howdy ho, neighbors. Hope everybody's doing well. How's my audio? Hello? Number one, could you give me an audio check, please?
electricity, unbelievable. Unbelievable. But of course, the USA, the government, and the stock market were first. They were before all of this, right before all of it. Not way before all of it, just right before. Right before. In 1936, we have the first computer. So now we have TVs, computers. What's next? 1946, the NBA started. So basketball starts with the most ridiculous story of all time. They started the game of basketball with a peach basket and a soccer ball. You know, all of us, we all just make games on our free time with peach baskets that turn into multi-billion-dollar industries. And in 1983, the internet was created. Just incredible. This timeline is so short, yet you've got everything you need, and you had nothing before this. How do you go from nothing to everything? This is proof, in my opinion, that they had all this stuff. They know how to run a society from scratch. They implant it right into our society after a few years, and here we are today.
This new Special Forces device turns men into beasts. It burns calories on autopilot by emulating 10,000 crunch.
All right, it's been about 5 months since we discussed possibly the main point in all of this, possibly the biggest, clearest giveaway that is given to us through the mainstream narrative, and that is that nearly every major invention, from planes to trains, cars to phones, computers, light bulbs, radios and major sports organizations, everything was given to us in the last 300 years. They went from cavemen all the way to the society that we know it now, all due to evolution. There's a different, much more logical explanation than to think that people were writing letters with duck feathers until us geniuses came around, and we are going to dive way deeper down this truth hole today. We are told that the USA begins in 1776. Immediately after, 16 years later, we have the stock market open up. And as we've talked about before, and this is where evolution, for whatever reason, finally starts to work. For once. And the whole world supposedly becomes so intelligent and starts creating flying crafts and engines and phones, trains, TVs, and the rest of it. This is absolutely insane to believe. Then we have Australia that comes into the picture in 1901. The main issue that we have here is that we have the construction from the past civilization that is sitting here staring at us right in our faces. Buildings that we do not recreate today in 2023. Cities such as Budapest that have a coffee shop, a parliament building, and chocolate museums that look straight out of the movies. We have identified nearly 100 fire stories to this point, where buildings that are said to be built in the 1800s that clearly are from the old world are completely destroyed due to a fire, even though they're mostly made of stone, which is not flammable. Understanding this massive historical lie, understanding that there was a previous that is no longer here. Where they went, or what even took place, that removed them from this place, is what we want to know. They left all of their structures here for us to see. In my opinion, they left all of their technology. They were able to construct the St. Mark's Basilica in 4 years, from 828 to 832, but didn't have a light bulb? Give me a break. They built the inside with candlelight. Oh, and don't forget that it lasts forever. Unlike anything that we build today, even though
Hey,
this
how's
was
my
time period,
hey,
before they even knew how
Peter,
to make paper,
how's my
it really is
audio?
incredible that once you get it, you don't go back to not getting it. You can see it all very clearly in nearly every town in the world. This past civilization had much more technology that we have not been given back yet. We have been given the car back.
Can I get an audio check?
The TV and cell phones, the light bulb and computers, internet and power tools. All major movies have been recreated. We know what we like. Refrigerators, cameras, GPS.
Sounds not too good.
All of this in the last 300 years. In my opinion, like I've said, they have had all of it. But more specifically, this ChatGPT
Is that better?
stuff really been
Is the
around.
audio better
Do you
now?
think this is the first time? I definitely do not. We get characters from the East Coast that somehow make it over to Chicago and then over to California within a matter of a 1 to 2 year span.
How about you?
With no articles of them ever
Is this better?
existing, or they were store managers and not architects like we have proven, or they were in Alaska at the time that they were supposed to be in Texas. If you have used ChatGPT, you will fully understand how simple this would be to create a false narrative using AI. And if we are
You
allowed
doing
to
all
use
right, Peter?
ChatGPT, what kind of AI do you think they have?
You
Even
doing all right,
languages are
Peter?
very interesting. Were all these languages developed all over the world to keep us from being able to share value? Masses and manipulate the minds. We've talked about books in the past and how it is important to have them. If this trend where people use, if our information is wiped from the answer is nothing. Nothing will be. And this is how history can easily be rewritten.
Hello. How's
The
that?
next civilization and the thing.
Is that better? Is this better? You got better audio now?
Holiness and giving this information about the historical narrative. This is not by accident.
Much better. Good.
That's impossible. Yet nearly every major holds a fire story
All right.
in its narrative.
How
And
about
every
that?
major city has had a great fire. And are these fires great? Not for us, but I think for them. To destroy all of
Thank
the
you,
past
Peter.
civilizations.
I feel a lot better.
All happening within the last 200,
really do.
300 years. But why
I finally
lie
got
about
my
the
power
history?
hooked up.
Well, why not? You get to hold on to all the power over all the people.
I finally got my power hooked up. Thank you for noticing, by the way. It really has made a big difference. I'm pretty much just taking care of myself, you know, getting rid of this radiation in my system.
It all before. You know how the system works. You've got all kinks out in past civilization. Now you get to control the banking system, all technology, the governments, what the people watch, what the people listen to. You control what is acceptable in society. You control what is not acceptable in society. And what is thought of as crazy. Why wouldn't they reset the system and control it all for their advantage? Releasing old world tech to their advantage when there was already free energy. Some people have asked, why would they lie about all of this? When all people should be asking, why wouldn't they lie about this? Do you think that this place that we live is really designed so that we couldn't supply ourselves with food, with energy, with water? We are manipulated and in a trance. Do even 1% of people supply themselves with food? Why are we told that the sun, the one thing that creates all life, the one thing that grows the healthiest things in the world to eat and gives vitamins to you, is dangerous and should be avoided? Where did our common sense go? I think now is the time that we find it. Bring it back and take control of our lives again. I've said this many times. This is not just about building. This is not just about history. This is much deeper and much more important.
Best and worst foods for your liver. Artichokes. They are really good for bile production, which can help to clean your liver. Not properly washing your fruits and veggies, non-organic or unwashed fruits.
Bonus time.
This is my opinion, of course, but
I think this is going to be a good episode to come back to for most people that would like to introduce someone new to this topic of the old world. Or a simple reminder of what we've been told is the truth versus what is really going on in front of our faces. Now, I have been seeing a few people across multiple platforms that haven't really looked into this topic that are saying that just because we have done this before and can see the buildings here in front of us, this automatically means that we are able to construct these buildings today if we wanted to, even though we never do and never will. We have all the tools and make mistakes all the time. Our buildings and bridges fall apart after 100 years, but the ones from the 1800s and much longer before that were built with perfection and not one flaw, thrown together in less than a year without blinking an eye. It was simple, perfect stonework, never a mistake. Remember, in 2023, we use actual construction companies. We have the tools, not slaves, not prisoners, not horses and wagons. We are supposed to be so much better than the people.
What's up, brother?
This is what they tell us. This is the mainstream narrative. Evolution, of course. But we have proven time and time again that the people from the 1800s built Capitol buildings over and over and over in less than a year. Basilicas, cathedrals, all over the world. They get burned to the ground by a fire. And then a few short months later, the old one is all cleaned up and a new one is there forever. They could knock out entire towns in a few months, entire world's fairs. They supposedly were able to build these buildings so fast, so well, with untrained workers, people that have never constructed anything before, prisoners, people that went to jail for any reason at all. They could all build cathedrals in every country, in every town, in every century, except for this one that we're in today. They built so many of them and so fast that they could just afford to knock them all down when they were done. This is what we're told, of course. In my opinion, none of this happened. In my opinion, these buildings are from the previous civilization. And our entire history timeline is a complete fabrication. And this is proven time and time again. And the fire story gives it all away, every time. Let's expose the lies even further. Here we are in Texas, more specifically, 414 St. Joseph Street, Gonzales, Texas. And why are we here? Well, they have the Gonzales County Courthouse. And in my opinion, the narrative is lying. Are you guys ready? Here we go. The contract was awarded to Furman Morin on June 26, 1894.
Thank you, mass
There's something
propaganda.
weird going on here. We're told that this wasn't the first courthouse on this site. This is the second building to serve as the county courthouse. Well, what do you mean this wasn't the first one? What happened to the first one? The first Gonzales County Courthouse burned down on December 3rd, 1893. Do you notice how fast they tried to throw that in there? It was like they thought we wouldn't notice or something. Of course we will. This is what we do. Look at how they worded it, too. They didn't even say the first building or the first courthouse. They just quickly say, the first burned on December 3rd, 1893. And they just want to move on like nothing happened. So we get the nod. Another fire story. Very interesting. And also the clear giveaway that this is a building from the past civilization. In my opinion, and a reminder that there was never a fire here on this site. This is simply a nod to their group that this building is from the old world. Now, let's continue shredding this nonsense apart. We are told that the second county courthouse was completed on April of 1896. The contract was awarded in June of 1894. They get their superintendent for the construction in 1895. And then in April of 1896, the building is done. And this all happens in basically 2 years after the first one burned down. And it's weird, because it takes almost as much time to find the superintendent as it does to actually build the entire building. And it lasts forever. So let's get this straight. They're telling us that December 1893, the first one is in flames, and we have no idea who built that one, or anything about it. And don't ask any questions about that one. And then 6 months later, it's gone, and all cleaned up by June of 1894. And the contract is ready to roll. And from June 1894, we wait until some point in time in 1895, so at least 6 months, but could have been 18 months. Since they don't share the information, we have to speculate. So let's meet in the middle at 12 months to find a construction guy. And then he knocks this thing out somehow by April of 1896.
Who believes that he did this in less than a year? How many people worked for him? It's just weird that they tell us that he was just an owner of a quarry that had limestone in it. Now all of a sudden, he is a construction superintendent guy that builds massive courthouses in a year. Wow, the 1800s were incredible. You could truly be anything you want back then. Amazing. And a total joke of a story. This is absolute insanity, that this kind of stuff is what we are supposed to believe actually happened. We all understand that in order to build a massive courthouse, you would need to get all the materials there. We would need to have a proper amount of construction workers that are properly trained. This quarry owner can't just go build it himself. We would need the proper equipment, incredible architecture. The planning had to be perfect. Using the specs that they give us on this courthouse, I asked ChatGPT a question, and the answer was eye-opening. I asked hypothetically, how long would it take to build a courthouse in 1895? And how many men would you need? I asked if it could give me a breakdown of how much material would be needed, and also include other details that are important in constructing a courthouse that covers 2.7 acres. I explained that it is a building in a Romanesque revival style, with eclectic details, meaning it covers other types of architecture designs, and that it will be built with red brick and white limestone trim. Now these are the specs that we are given from the mainstream narrative. This is what they tell us. They tell us this information because they have to. The thing is literally sitting here looking right at us. For anyone that wants to go look at it, you can walk right up to it and see it. Or you can see a picture of it as we are right now. So let's see what this AI tells us. We are told that constructing a courthouse in 1895, in the specs that they stated, would have been a significant undertaking. And here's the breakdown. Just the design and planning would have taken pretty much a year. Just because it's 1895, you still need permits and approvals. This happened in 1895. This isn't caveman days, where you just get to build massive buildings and not tell anyone about it. So the fact that they're ignoring this part of the story over and over is crazy. This would have taken another couple months. So then we move on to the materials. We are told that the amount of red brick needed would depend on the design and size of the courthouse. Courthouses that cover 2.7 acres could use hundreds of thousands to millions of bricks. This is an unbelievable amount of material just for bricks alone. The process in getting these materials to the site is not easy. So then the white limestone trim. 100,000 cubic feet of limestone. The wood for interior elements, including flooring, stairs, and doors. A substantial amount of wood would be required. Then we will need steel and glass, and not just any glass. They have to be perfect for windows, in the Romanesque revival style. Now, of course, the best part, in my opinion, because they don't even mention any people that help this quarry owner guy. The labor, the number of workers needed would vary. But constructing such a massive courthouse might require hundreds of laborers. Hundreds? And not a mention of one in this story? And this isn't even to build it in a year. This is just saying to build it in a respectable timeline. So to build it in a year, there had to be way more than hundreds of workers, like we're told. Amazing. Okay, you would need bricklayers, carpenters, masons. Oh, did I say that? Steelworkers, and general laborers. When we are told that slaves and prisoners built these places in a year, just remember this, and ask yourself if you think this is true or not. Now we have the construction time. Given the scale and complexity, construction could take several years, perhaps 3 to 5 years. The Romanesque revival style, with its ornate details, would require careful craftsmanship, which takes time. So these workers had to have been trained and been good at it, especially finishing it in a year. This is insane. How are these workers not world-renowned? Wouldn't there be statues of them? They probably could have made the statues themselves in their backyards in a couple of days, since they were so good at it. And now, of course, we have the ridiculous part of the transportation. Transporting materials to the construction site. And before we get into this, I want to mention this, that they don't mention this in the story. And I think they don't on purpose, because it is so insane. Here we go. Transporting materials to the construction site would require horses, wagons, and likely a nearby source of limestone. Okay, so the horses and wagons moved the 100,000 cubic feet of limestone from the quarry. What a joke. Now they will need tools, of course. You can't do this without tools. So here's the tools and equipment section. Tools of the time,
would include hammers, chisels, saws, cranes, and various other hand tools. Just hammering and chiseling away in 1895 to 1896 with their horses and wagons. The fact that they tell us these buildings go up all over the world in a year is such a lie, in my opinion. You'd need a source of water for mixing mortar, and for the workers. If it's a large project, which this one definitely is, you might even need on-site housing for the workers, which they don't have on-site housing for the workers. Have you ever seen a narrative say this? No. They ignore the actual logistics in every narrative. You need people to build these places, and people need things, such as housing, food, water. This is common sense, yet never mentioned. Stone carvers and artisans would be required for this work. What was their names? Did the quarry owner do that himself? No. Which company had pro stone carvers and artisans? And of course, supervision. You'd need a skilled supervisor and project managers to ensure the work proceeds smoothly and to quality standards. And this is literally the only part that we are given. The only part we are given is the person that should be watching over all of the things that actually have to happen. I'm going to put this in sports terms. They're basically telling us the name of the coach for the Patriots, and then forgetting to tell us all about Tom Brady, or the coach's name of the Lakers and the Bulls, and not saying anything about Kobe, LeBron, Michael Jordan, or Dennis Rodman. All we get is Phil Jackson and Frank Vogel. This is insane. This is not working anymore. So I asked it to be more specific with the timeline. I said, so in all, how long would this all take? It responded with this. Given the complexity and scale of constructing a courthouse, covering 2.7 acres in the Romanesque revival style, with red brick and white limestone trim, in 1895, the entire process could take 1 year to just design and plan it. Another several months to permitting and approvals, several more months to a year for the materials, and 3 to 5 years to build the building. So in total, it mathematically and logistically should take anywhere from 4.5 years to 7.5 years. This is unbelievable, considering so many times we are told that a building goes down in a fire and then another one is built in a few months. This kind of brushing it off at a few months kind of thing isn't working anymore. And I don't want to end the episode yet. I want to go even deeper and even more specific. So I asked, how many horses would they need for this project? And here we go. The horses would be needed for 6 major things in this project in 1895. Transporting, milling and lifting, general labor, site grading and excavation, water and power, cranes and heavy lifting, and getting the cranes there to the site, of course. This would take 20 to 30 horses to finish the project in 4.5 to 7.5 years, not 1 year. So we all understand. They would need way more than 30 horses, and we all understand that horses need water. Remember, this is for 30 horses for possibly 7.5 years. I want to make that point extremely clear. This is not the 1 year timeline that we're told. Now here we go. Let's absolutely destroy the narrative and end it forever. That any building anywhere in the world, like this one, could not be simply built in a year and just brushed off with zero explanation. How much water would the horses actually need? This is a key point that cannot be ignored, like it is in the mainstream narrative. A typical horse would drink anywhere from 5 to 15 gallons of water per day for a project like this. This is to properly keep the horses hydrated, or they will die, especially in Texas, where it's extremely hot in the summer months. For only 30 horses, you would need 300 gallons of water per day. This is only 10 horses over 7.5 years. Where is all this water coming from? Why is this massive point ignored? The point alone proves that this project did not happen in a year. This is such a horrible slip-up for the narrative, and it is the most important part of the logistic project that needs to be taken care of. Without the water supply for the main transportation for the project, none of this happens anywhere in the world in the 1800s. From this point on, a narrative that tells us that they built a building in a year in the 1800s without explaining the massive supply of water for the horses should be looked at as a lie. Incredible. This is a major failure by the narrator, a massive flaw that now opens the floodgates. This narrative is not possible. Did they think that we would never question this? And now we know. that this type of construction is not even close to possible. We are waking up to the nonsense. We are educating each other, building a group of people that are not just accepting lies and actually questioning. We are looking into things, and the more we look, the easier it gets. The more answers we find, and the more truth comes through. And the more that we know, the harder and harder it is to lie to us. Once you know the truth, like I always say, you don't go back to not knowing. You are now awake, and you will take this information with you and apply it to the next story, where they will tell you that a building was built in a year by a quarry owner that never built anything before and never again in his entire life.
With weight loss by Hims, customers report losing over 11 pounds in just their first month with compounded GLP-1 injections. Through Hims, you can get a personalized weight loss treatment plan 100% online, prescribed by a licensed provider and delivered to your door.
And we have a bonus today as a thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing to the channel. But before we do this, I'm going to make this extremely clear. I do not have a problem with any group, race, religion, or any of that. These narratives cover all races, religions, and agendas. So now that we're clear on that, we have the Yeshiva University High School. This is a modern Orthodox Jewish day school located on 2540 Amsterdam Avenue, New York, New York. It only has 300 students aged 14 to 18. Only boys are allowed in this school. For anyone that has not seen episode 35, you may want to check that one out after this, so you fully understand the legal definition of the word founded. Let's pretend that we constructed an incredible building that looks just like this one. Would we say that we found it, or would we say that we built it? Honestly, it's as simple as that. We do not say that we founded our houses. This is ridiculous and incredible that the word founded has been thought of as built for so long. The founding fathers found a lot of stuff that they didn't build. Telling you is a rule for some reason. Being able to tell you something and you not understand what you're saying is still you accepting that you're being told something. This is a classic spell that is cast. It is a deception tactic. The word spelling is literally spell casting. Founded is not constructed or built. All right, let's get back to the school. What do we see here in the alumni section? We haven't found more people that found a bunch of stuff, have we? Actually, we found 6 people that seem to be good at finding things, all having something to do with this building that was found. Now, the individual who found this building is surely a great guy who wouldn't steal anything or say that a building that he finds is his, or would he? The TA, as it originally was called, was founded in 1916 by Rabbi Dr. Bernard Revel. Bernard Revel? Who is this guy? Oh, he was a great guy that was only arrested and imprisoned in Russia and then immigrated over to the United States to find this building. While in America, he struggled, though. Oh, wait, no. He married right into a rich family in 1909. All right, so enough about this guy. I think we get the point. And we have this section of the story, of course. Interesting, okay. February 9th of this current year, 2023. Okay, right, okay. Giving 1.5 million to this school, all right. And we all know about renovations. How these buildings don't need to be renovated. This is normally a way to destroy the old world. But let's check this auditorium out. Interesting. What do you think? Does this need renovation? Looks pretty incredible to me. The project is going to include the restoration of stained glass windows and ceiling. What is wrong with the windows and the ceiling? We have eyes to see. Do we need someone else to tell us that the ceiling and the glass look awesome and should be left alone? What is this? Look at that architecture. The stonework on this place is so detailed and precise. Whoever did this was unbelievable at their job. How is this individual, or group, or construction team, how are they unknown to us? And it was supposedly built within the last 100 years. So we should definitely know who did this. That fact alone should get alarms ringing. If they could really build this place, you would have to ask yourself, why would they write the name of the whole building so pathetic? That alone should be a major red flag. For anyone that is on the fence, this is crazy. Look at how terrible that is. It is totally put on the building by our civilization, not the ones that built the building. And they do it again here. This is laughable stuff. It looks like they just put a sticker on the stone and called it a day. So here's the outside where the stained glass is going to be destroyed and redone by our advanced civilization. It is clear that these colors and this pattern is meaningful, and we simply do not understand it. It's not damaged, it's not old, it doesn't need our help. So here's the building that we are talking about. This is a photo from 1928, and I'm guessing 1928, even though it only says 28. And look at these windows, clearly being covered up by the sidewalk, more and more as we go from left to right. Very interesting. We have shown this kind of window covering before, and it shows that this building is definitely much bigger than we can see with our eyes. And who really knows what the date of this place is? That's someone's handwriting on the picture. I could have easily wrote that for all we know. I didn't, but my point is that it's just crazy the things that we just blindly accept, just because we are told that it's true by someone or a group that has awarded themselves the leader. This picture could be from the past civilization for all we know, and our finders found their camera. Now here on the Yeshiva University website, under this founder Bernard guy's bio, they tell us that in 1928, they were supposedly granted permission to build this building that we are looking at. 1928, remember, the institution's charter was amended to authorize the granting of Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Science degrees. Now, because they are allowed to give out degrees, they were now going to construct their main building. That same year, in 1928, like we talked about, the building is done, as shown in the picture from November 26, 1928. So we are now being told that this building was constructed in less than 11 months. Anyone else see these pictures? A year? 1 year to build all of this. There are massive alarms going off in this narrative. Look at the stonework alone. Less than a year? From start to finish. Which construction company was used? How many men? Where did they get the materials from? Which architect did they use? We have proven through AI, ChatGPT, that this is not possible to construct in a year. Not even close. There are so many major factors that are just brushed under the rug here in this crazy story that would need to be explained, that at this point, in my opinion, it's honestly impossible for it to be true. That ceiling alone should be questioned. This auditorium was just thrown together in a few months and still had plenty of time for the rest of the building in 11 months. It's just incredible stuff.
She's my grandma's age. You won't believe what she does.
I'm out here at the New Yorker. How does Dan shape? Mind if I ask how old you are? I'm 64. You're 6.
Such a lie, in my opinion. You'd need a source of water for mixing mortar, and for the workers. If it's a large crop, this in sports terms, ever again in his entire life. We have shown this kind of window cover. It was actual. We have shown this kind of window cover. It was actual. We have shown this kind of window cover.
Hey, yo.
Carlson, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Man, you're welcome. Thank you for being here.
Oh, I wanted to come.
I've been looking forward to this for so long. I haven't told anybody because I didn't want to jinx it, and now here you are.
Jinxed it. I was super psyched.
Oh.
I saw your tape. I was like, well, that guy is real. Unlike most people on the internet. And I texted you, got your number. I was like, that guy's good. Not to brag, but I was like, that guy's going to be a success.
Thank you.
He's not lying like everybody else.
Yeah. We actually got connected through Buck Sexton. So.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah, our mutual friend Buck. Yeah. So I gotta give Buck a shout out, man. Buck,
I love that.
Thank you. You're
Did
amazing.
you work with him?
No, we never actually worked at CIA at the same time. We met. You know how we met? We met. He had reached out to me because of the Eric Prince interview, and I heard him on the radio kind of talking about that interview, and then we got connected and became buddies, and so yeah, and then it developed into he put us in contact. So
I love that.
Yeah, me too. But so we got a lot of stuff to cover today in a short amount of time, and but I'd love to. I've not heard your life story on any other interviews, and so I'd love to kind of start there if you're willing.
Well, it's not that interesting. That's why I haven't talked about it. I'm not super. I've seen a lot of interesting stuff. My story's not that interesting. I was born in San Francisco.
Well, hold on. We'll get there. But let me give you a quick introduction.
Great.
Tucker Carlson, you are one of the leading voices in American politics. You host The Tucker Carlson Show, a brand new long-form conversational podcast. Time magazine has called you the most powerful conservative in America. After spending decades in cable news, you launched an online media company, TCN, to provide an alternative to corporate media that is dedicated to telling the truth about things that matter, clearly and without fear. Tucker Carlson hosted Fox News Channel's flagship primetime cable news program, Tucker Carlson Tonight. It was and still is the highest rated program in cable news history. Before that, you hosted other programs on Fox News, MSNBC, and CNN. You're the author of 2 recent New York Times bestsellers, Ship of Fools and The Long Slide. Husband, been with your wife 40 years.
40 years, 1984.
Congratulations. That's incredible.
She was 15. I was 33. It was weird.
Father to 4 children?
Yeah.
3 girls, 1 boy?
Exactly.
In the last year, you've shattered viewership records and reshaped the media landscape by bringing your interviews and reporting online. You've recently interviewed Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, Elon Musk, and many more of the biggest names in news and politics around the world. You're 22 years sober?
22 years.
And a man of God.
I would never call myself a man of God, but I definitely believe in God. Yeah, I am a Christian. Yes.
So, am I missing it? I'm sure I'm missing a lot.
No, I mean that. That's all half true. But yeah, I turn 55 tomorrow, so it is weird. I try not to be too reflective because that's just a well you can fall down and not get out of. But I basically just had the same job my whole life and just kept getting fired or having, the mediums that I worked in disappear, like magazines and newspapers, cable news, broadcast television, that all just kind of went away.
Yeah.
As the country changed. So I do feel blessed to have not a second act, but like a 9th act. I do really feel fortunate. I am fortunate. Not for the money even, or especially, but for the chance to do something that I like and that I think is sort of productive, and I have a lot of energy and I need to channel it into something that's not negative or self-destructive. And so I'm just really grateful. You don't want to be a middle-aged man, as I am, without an outlet.
Yeah.
Stay down. I'll make sure your cute girlfriend will be screaming my name tonight. Quinn hurt all over, but he picked himself up and faced the 7-foot-tall Troy. To many, Troy was the handsome star superhero of the Academy. To Quinn, he was his worst nightmare. "Where is Jennifer?" Quinn asked. Troy smirked. "Clearly not by your side any longer." After I've beaten you, by midnight I'm sure she'll have forgotten who you are. Talentless Talon. Quinn clenched his fists. I may not...
Well, you definitely had a superb career and continue to. What is it that you think that people gravitate?
I'm not
towards?
self-aware. I refuse to be self-aware. I don't even like mirrors. So at all, which you can probably tell from my appearance. So I have literally no idea, but I do think that, especially in the last, I mean, I think a lot of things, but in the last few years, it's become clear to me that the categories that I thought were real are not, and that it really is a contest, of, in fact, a war between the truth and deception. And so I believe, I don't always know what the truth is, and I've certainly repeated a lot of things that were lies, mostly unintentionally. I try not to lie. I have lied, but I try not to. But I've certainly said a ton of things that were wrong. But I am trying to tell the truth. I am. Not the whole truth all the time. You don't have to say everything you think. You shouldn't. But you can't lie. And I think that people can feel that. It's why I'm sitting right here. It's why I was attracted to your podcast. Someone sent me a clip, and I was like, and I actually love the content. I thought it was interesting and open-minded, but mostly I thought it was real. And I think that you can perceive that on like a gut level. Like I know when someone's lying to me. I don't always know what he's lying about or why he's lying, but I can smell deception, as we all can, from our instincts, instantly. And I don't have any special powers of any kind. I don't have a crazy high IQ, or I really don't have that many skills, but I would say my main skill is I believe my instincts. Like I don't think they lie to me. They're not trying to sell me something. They're not trying to get elected. They're there to serve me. I really believe that. That's true of all people and animals. I love animals, so I see this at work in animals as well. And I don't hesitate to follow my instincts, ever. And to the extent that I have, I've gotten in trouble. So again, I don't always know what those instincts mean. As I say to my children, they are unerring, but imprecise. Like they're absolutely real 100% of the time. The question is, how do you interpret them? Do you know what I mean?
I do. I know exactly what you mean.
That's probably why you're still alive.
Yeah.
Because you know what I'm talking about, right? Exactly. Yeah.
Every time I don't and I go against it,
yes,
I regret it.
Oh, I could write a book on the counter-instinctual moves I've made that turned out to be disasters, or the conclusions that I reached against my own. I mean, this was the thing for me with the vax. I didn't know anything about, I was not against vaccines particularly, and I grew up in a town in La Jolla, California that was sort of, the whole town was based on the polio vaccine. The Salk Institute, Jonas Salk Institute was there. I was not against vaccines. I hadn't really thought about them. I thought they were, I guess, miracles of science. That's what I was told. I don't even know what I think of vaccines now, but I'm skeptical. But the COVID vax, all I knew, I didn't know anything about mRNA technology. Of course, I still am not an expert on that. But I know a lot about human deception because that's been my job my whole life. And also I try to pay attention to whether something is true or false. And the behavior of the people selling me that was so transparently dishonest. I didn't know that the vax wouldn't work, which it didn't, of course. I didn't know that it would cause harm, which it did. But I did know that the people selling it were liars. Like I knew that instantly. And I know some of them, but I could just tell by their behavior they're lying. And I was like, I don't know what this is. No one in my family's getting this. We're not doing this. And I'm not doing this, period. Like I figured that out the first day.
Yeah.
That's not true. I did not figure it out. I still haven't figured it out. But I felt it so strongly and I just obeyed. And I think that works.
I think it does too.
Yeah.
Something I wanted to ask you to rewind a little bit. I ask everybody who's in a successful marriage this question. You've been with your wife 40 years.
Yeah.
I think you said you've been married for 33 years.
Yes.
In a country where divorce is the commonality, what would you say the secret to a successful marriage is?
I mean, luck, destiny, providence plays a huge role. You're not the author of your success or entirely of your failures, I would say. Also, there's a lot that happens in life that is not the product of choices that you made. Free will is overrated. I'm becoming more Calvinist by the day. Just watch it. Does the 5-year-old get leukemia because she did something wrong? Like, no. A lot of things, you spend a lot of your life in war. People who died, did they deserve? You know what I mean? It's like things happen that are not, for good and bad, that are not sort of up to you. And so a lot of having a happy marriage is just marrying someone with whom you're compatible and you change. I met my wife in 1984, and it's a completely different country, and we're different people, but we're different in the same way. Who's responsible? Who did that? Well, I didn't really. I hear people say, "Oh, marriage is so hard." I've never had a hard time. I mean, I've always enjoyed it. There are hard times. You got a lot of little kids, and you've got little kids. It's like pretty hard. But I've always been happy to be married to her, and more happy as the years go by. But to the extent that you can control these things, like pick the right person.
Hey, Bubba, come on.
Do not marry a stripper. They're all crazy. I'm sure some are nice. I've known some who are nice. I'm serious, but they're damaged. Try to marry a girl who likes her dad. I think that's important, or who did like her dad when she was little.
Why do you think that's important? I've never heard anybody say that.
Because I've noticed it. I've noticed it a lot, and up close. I mean, this is not, I'm not guessing it. Like, I could be completely wrong. This is just an observation of mine. But girls who like their dads, or who like their, everyone's disappointed by his dad or her dad in later life. Like, you learn that your dad's human, and holy shit, I can't believe he's human. I thought he was God. So that's natural. But, when you're 8, if you're deeply disappointed in your dad, especially as a girl, that leaves a mark. And I've known women who had terrible relationships with their fathers who were wonderful people and well-balanced people. But it's harder, for sure. And if a girl has a completely contentious relationship with her father and has been betrayed by him, the family abandoned by him, that can really have an effect. Whereas a woman who, grew up really loving her dad and feeling secure in his leadership as a dad and his love as a dad, that girl is more secure and less jumpy, and she's not, thinking that every argument's going to lead to divorce. The thing about damage in childhood is it's hard to sort of let go of those patterns. And products of divorce, like me, for example, it takes a while to realize that, like, you have a disagreement, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. You're not going to get divorced, So I think that's important. Second, just resolve not to get divorced. I do think that's important. I'm not a particularly virtuous person at all, actually, but I did, when I got married, I had lived through a divorce as a child. I was like, I'm not doing that. Period. My wife came from a stable family, and she was like, divorce? Like, what? That was not even a thing. But I resolved, I'm not doing that. And so that, I think, is helpful to decide, here are the boundaries, whatever we're doing, we're not splitting up. But I would say the main thing is spending time with your wife when your kids are little, which is really hard. It's so hard. And you love your kids, and so it's very tempting, or it's natural, actually, to divert your attention from your spouse to your children, because they're your children, and that's natural, and you should do that. But it's also very easy, indeed, it's the natural course, to ignore your spouse in favor of your children, because children are instantly affirming. Your spouse is complicated. You can be with a woman for, as I have, 40 years and still only get 65% comprehension of what she's saying, because she's a woman, so you can't really understand. You know what I mean?
I do.
Which is, of course, the beauty of it. That's why it's interesting and fresh and a challenge and cool, and you learn a lot. And if she was just like you would learn nothing. It's just narcissism. It's masturbation. But because she's so different from you, it's like, what? It forces you out of yourself to figure it out. But the temptation for men is to be like, okay, I have a choice of hanging out with my 5-year-old. It's like, Dad, you're so great. And my wife, who's kind of pissed at me for reasons I don't really understand, she's just crazy. So I'm going to just go out with the kids, because that's the sugar high. That's plus they're my kids. So I can justify it. If you keep doing that, you will destroy your marriage. And it's so vital for men to force themselves to work through the crazy. Your wife is not, she's kind of crazy, of course, but she's not deeply crazy, actually. She's probably wise. And to force yourself to get over that hump, which is the first 10 minutes, you're like, I can't, what the f are you saying? Leave me alone, you're crazy. To get past that and realize, no, actually, she's trying to tell me something that's really important, and be humble enough to hear it and assess it rationally. And that's a process. It's painful at first. And I have found the two practical techniques that work are long walks, because you're not facing each other. So if there's a dispute, you don't have to look into each other's eyes. It's too intense. It's like big cats can't stare at each other without eating each other. I've never had a problem in my marriage that I couldn't walk off. And then the higher level of that is the day-long in bed summit meeting for big issues. So if you have not a minor, but like a long-standing issue, a family problem, for example. Like, what do we do about that? That's very complicated. I don't know what to do, and I think we kind of disagree, and I'm pissed at you about it. Then it sort of simmers. That's when you check into a hotel for a weekend, and you get room service, you get butt naked, and you sit in bed, and you talk about it. Indirectly, in the way you do on a sensitive subject. You don't dive right in, but you get comfortable, and you stay there until it's solved. And
I've never heard that one either. That's great.
In our family, we call these summit meetings. We have a couple famous ones that have solved like big problems. I mean, we don't have big problems. We never have big problems. But like, you know, there are things where you have a difference of opinion and you don't want to fight, so you don't fully articulate it, but you're just like, you know, it's always the same. She's crazy. He's an asshole. She's crazy. He's an asshole. It's like, you know, it's like those are the defaults, right? And so it's, but you realize that she's not crazy, and you're probably slightly less of an asshole than she assumed you were, and you just need to talk it through. And that just, it takes time, and it also takes some balls to face female dissatisfaction. Like, I don't care the bravest man, I don't care how many terrorist doors you've breached, facing off against a pissed off wife is the scariest thing you'll ever do. It's scarier than jumping out of an airplane. No man wants to do it, that's why they golf. And to make yourself do that is really hard. That's called leadership, actually. That is male leadership. And it's so worth it. It's so worth it, but you never want to do it. The man's impulse is to run away. Every single, I don't care how honorable you think you are.
Yeah.
You're not gonna like abandon her, go get a pack of cigarettes and not come back, okay? So that happens. But you're gonna abandon her in subtle, easy to justify ways, mostly by hanging with your kids.
Resolutions can be easier than this. At Chewy, you'll find thousands of quality pet meds and health products to help them stay in tip-top condition now and all year long. For meds and essentials, for life with pets, there's Chewy.
You know, I've seen a lot during my time as a Navy SEAL and a CIA contractor, and I've learned even more hosting this show. The one thing I can tell you for sure is that it pays to be prepared. Right now, with our national debt surging to unfathomable levels, global tension rising, and the corruption in Washington, ask yourself, are you prepared financially? Me? I'm buying gold and silver so I'm not caught off guard by the next recession or global conflict. And teamed up with one of the top gold IRA companies, Goldco, to make that happen. I want you to go to SeanLikesGold.com or call 855-936-GOLD. You'll get a free 2024 wealth protection kit from Goldco, plus you may qualify for up to $10,000 in bonus silver while supplies last. So go to SeanLikesGold.com or call 855-936-GOLD and get your bonus silver today. Once again, that's 855-936-GOLD or visit SeanLikesGold.com. Performance may vary. Consult with your tax attorney or financial professional before making an investment decision.
Come on.
Today's show is sponsored by HelixSleep.com. Sleep, especially as you get older, is critical.
Come on.
And the last thing I'll say is, if you want to have happy children, have a happy marriage. That is the most important thing you can do for your children. If it's a choice between going to Dylan's soccer game and taking your wife to dinner, take your wife to dinner. Your kids will benefit from that much more than anything you could do for them, any game you could go to, any bedtime story you could read to them. Focus, make your wife happy, and your children will be happy and secure. What they want is security, predictability, knowing that at the center of the family is an immovable rock called this marriage, this love between man and wife. And you will find that is, you want kids who like each other, which is the measure of happy kids. They like each other. And you want kids who are like calm and reasonable and happy and not addicted to drugs, have a happy marriage. And I think it's that simple. I think it's that simple.
Man, that's great advice. Thank you.
It's worked for me.
Younger people, that's probably going to help. That's amazing.
Well, it's pretty simple, but don't run away. Don't want to run away. I felt that so many times. I can't deal with this. I'm out of here. I've got important things to do.
I love the marry a girl that loves her dad. That is something I've never heard of. And
well, I had a really close friend. I don't want to reveal too much. It's like someone really close to me who married like a truly crazy woman. It's a relative of mine, like actually crazy. It's like flamboyant. Like it's not a close call. This is like a crazy, malicious, narcissist drug addict, like actual. And this is a very smart person. And I said to him once, like, we're on a hunting trip. We're sitting in a duck blind, actually. And I said, I don't want to hurt your feelings, or was this all kind of personal and it's too close and all this? But like, why'd you do that? She's like, completely bonkers and bad. And he said to me, there are upsides. That's not what he said. There are upsides. And she hated her dad, she hated her dad, but there were upsides, if you know what I mean. And for the purposes of like a weekend, men are really easily controlled. It's totally true. They're very easily controlled. They're such simple organisms. And so, yeah, but if it's a choice between, like a hot weekend in Reno or a lifetime of happiness, like you can lead them through predictability, reliability, good leadership, providing, protecting, doing the things that men are on this earth to do. You can lead them to a pretty awesome sex life, just to be blunt. But it is not worth, like, I don't care how crazy she is in the sack or whatever, you do not want to marry an unhappy, crazy person, like, at all. I mean, this is obvious, but the consequences of that are I'd rather have cancer,
Yeah.
Not to be too blunt.
No, that was great stuff. So we have a subscription account. It's on Patreon. One of the things that I give them the opportunity to do, because they've been so good to us, they've been here since the beginning, our best supporters, our top supporters. And so I give them an opportunity to ask a question.
Oh, I love it.
Every interview. And so this is from Michael Cummings. If you had to make one statement about who you believe really runs this country, what would it be?
Watch what eating before bed does to your skin. What you eat for dinner might have a greater impact on your skin.
It depends what you mean by who. It's really a class of people. It's the people who are the beneficiaries of our fake meritocracy, the people with the most merit badges, the people who bought into the lie that undergirds the current disaster, which is if you come up through these legacy institutions and gather the degree or the resume, or, you go to whatever, Horace Mann, and then Andover, and then Yale, and then HBS, and McKinsey, and you go up through whatever, the tokens of achievement that you hand out to a certain class of people, that you will be a wise leader. And that's demonstrably untrue, of course. They've mismanaged all the big things, the things that matter, the economy, our foreign policy, and they've destroyed the family too. So really the worst people. So, but it's the products of that system, a group I'm highly familiar with, that have wrecked everything but are still currently in charge. And the struggle between Trump and Biden is not a struggle between two guys, two elderly men with different worldviews. No, it's a struggle between classes of people. These are symbols, right? They're not, they're people, of course. Mm-hmm. But in the case of Trump as a person, Biden is not fully human anymore because he's got dementia, but whatever. I shouldn't say not fully human, but he's not
fully functioning here.
Yeah, he's not a totally autonomous being anymore. He doesn't have personal sovereignty anymore. But whatever. but it's not even about them. Even if he did, it's not about them. It's about classes of people and who should be running the country. Should it be the people, this leadership class, which really is the product of a quite elaborate grooming system that's come up over the last century, but really accelerated post-war, last 80 years, or like the rest of the people who live here? Should they have a voice too? Should they have any power? So, but that's who's running it. And it's quite a large group, actually. And I grew up, if not in, then certainly adjacent to that group. So I'm quite knowledgeable about it, and I've lived around it. So I know it when I see it, instantly know it when I see it. And I didn't question it really as much as I do now. Now I find it completely repulsive and immoral and really disgusting, actually. But I didn't always feel that way because I didn't fully understand it. But the reason that it's so hard to describe who's really in charge and why people often decide, like, well, it's got to be Bohemian Grove or, some small group of people. The reason that it's so hard to really pinpoint who's making decisions is because it's quite large and diffuse. It's an entire class of people with similar instincts and similar vested interests in things. And they, unfortunately, just have an awful lot of power, and they control the monopolies that define our economy.
Do you think that, are these people you're talking about, are they controlling the country or are they controlling the world?
Well, that's a really interesting question, and I don't know if I've arrived at a really clear answer, but it's certainly obvious at this point that borders are overrated, as meaningful distinctions between, do countries matter? No, I mean, globalization was originally conceived as an economic system, a much more efficient economic system, where like it's cheaper to do one thing in that country, it's cheaper to do this thing in that country, and why don't we just network them effectively, and that'll be a much more efficient economy, and we'll grow GDP, which we claim is an accurate measure of something, I guess, of wealth. It's not, but let's just say that was the thought. But what it turned into, because governance does tend to follow economics, what it turned into was a leadership system. So in other words, what we thought was just like a way to get cheaper electronics from the Far East turned out to be effectively world government. Not, of course, strictly speaking world government, not officially world government in the way that we sort of people feared 40 years ago, that the UN's going to run everything. It's much more informal than that, but much more durable than that. So it's a network of businesses, governments, intel agencies for sure, and NGOs that determine what's allowed and what's not allowed. And as someone who travels a lot abroad and has, on and off my whole life, I don't know that it has amounted to much, but I definitely have been a lot of places, as you have. The most noticeable trend, and I traveled a lot as a kid, so I've sort of seen the difference. The most noticeable trend is the homogenization of everything. Everything looks the same. The attitudes are all the same. Everyone has the same, fashionable attitudes that are really top-down delivered. And the world has just sort of lost its differences. There are some exceptions. There are some places you go, I really want to go to North Korea, not because I have any love for this, Stalinism. Of course I don't. I hate it. But I do sort of want to be a place that's a little bit different from other places. Mm-hmm. Because I actually believe in diversity in the truest sense. Like, I think differences are fine. I actually like them. I appreciate them. I think we need them. I think nature creates differences. God creates differences. So I resent the fact that everything is the same. But that is one measure of the power of this class. It's international. It's completely international. So the whole idea of like a sovereign nation putting one country's interest before another country's, that's like completely alien to the way the leadership class thinks, completely. Things go to shit here, I'll move to Singapore. And if they, the Chinese do to Singapore what they did to Hong Kong, then I'm in Abu Dhabi. And if things go to shit there, then I'm in wherever the next place is. Do you know what I mean? Baker's Bay, or whatever. It's like it's a way of thinking. And it's hard to defeat that,
Yeah. It's, man, it just seems so complicated. And then
but it's a conspiracy of instinct. It's almost like you saw this with the COVID vax. Like I was watching this and I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, why is everybody saying exactly the same thing? Are there talking points that went out? Well, of course there were actually talking points that went out, And there was a conspiracy to bribe hospitals and churches and all these different groups to, like, you know, stick with the message, the same message. But it was more than that. It was just like a certain sort of person reaches the same conclusion. The people, and really a lot of it's economic. It's like the people who've derived the greatest benefit from American society or global elite society as it currently exists are almost to a person the least productive people in the society. People who like loan money at interest. Really? I mean, I guess there's a role for finance, I guess, in a society. But tell me how people who loan money for a living should be, you know, the most revered and the most highly rewarded. No, they probably shouldn't be, actually. The people who make things, who innovate in a true sense, who actually improve human life, people who say profound things, create beautiful things, like, they should be rewarded. So it's all the truth is the people in charge are the least impressive, they're the least important. If they went away tomorrow, if, like, I don't know, Susan Rice and Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, is like a freaking moron and a like bad person. If she went away tomorrow, would that be bad? Or like, it wouldn't have make any difference. She's never done anything. And so that class of people, which is disproportionately benefited from our system, has a lot to lose. A lot. The most to lose. Like, if I'm a super competent diesel mechanic, you know, diesel engines are going to be around for a long time. Sorry, you're not going to do long-haul trucking on an electric motor. Sorry, just we're not anytime soon. So, like, if I can fix a diesel engine, like, my value is demonstrable. I'm probably not going to be unemployed, actually. But if you're Janet Yellen, and you're like an economist who knows nothing about economics, and your whole life is getting paid off by the banks, which hers has been, you're not really needed, actually. You're a net drain on society. And so someone like that has a lot to protect, like a lot. Like, the whole edifice of bullshit could just, like, come crashing down on her, right?
Yeah.
So she's a lot jumpier than your average diesel mechanic.
Why do you think, I mean, you're talking about, how old is Janet Yellen? She's got to be
several hundred years old, I think. Janet Yellen, who's like a criminal, and she literally was Fed chair and she took payoffs from the banks, really, for speeches.
Why aren't they, people like her, people like Pelosi, people like Mitch McConnell, why don't they hit this point where they go, I'm going to enjoy all of the corrupt money that I've accumulated over the 80 years that I've been doing this? Why is there ever a time when enough is enough for them? I mean, they're gonna.
Well, the worship of money is a sin, of course, but it's also a lie. It doesn't make you happy. It doesn't fill a void. It doesn't get you to heaven. And to repeat the most tired of all cliches that you never hear anymore, you can't take it with you.
Yeah.
So it's just a lie. It's a disease, and it's a moral disease, and it's one that no one mentions anymore. So greed is not only fine, it's celebrated. Well, it's disgusting. I'm just going to remind everybody of that. It's not bad to have enough. It's bad to have too much, actually. And but no one believes that anymore at all.
Yeah.
And it's considered like you're a socialist or something if you say greed is bad. Well, no, you're not. I'm hardly I hate socialism. I'm not a socialist. And thankfully, I've been like a public right-winger for so long. I don't think anyone actually thinks I'm a socialist. I'm a right-winger. Always have been, I guess, whatever that means now. But greed is bad. It's not a virtue. It's a vice. And they're all besotted with greed, of course. And they think that the more you accumulate, I don't know what happens. You become. It's a function of power. The more power you have, the more you feel like God. But you're not God. You're just like some ungainly primate feeling his way through the dark. You know, like we all are. And you'll be negatively rewarded for those attitudes at some point very soon. So it's sad on one level, but it's also, if your whole leadership class is just about serving itself, it's all about greed and hubris, which it is, you're going to have like really terrible leadership, and we do. So it's only about leadership, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're in the military, I don't need to tell you, but bad leaders result in death.
Introducing Weight Loss by Hims. Personalized prescriptions, including GLP-1 injections and oral medication kits designed to help you lose weight so you can gain confidence and feel healthy. Plus, get guidance on nutrition, movement, sleep, hydration, and answers when you need them. 100% online. With weight loss by Hims, you have so much to lose and even more to gain. GLP-1 injections starting at $165 a month. Get started today at hims.com.
Like, that's obvious, right? It's less obvious at the scale of like 350 million people in our society, but it's still true. It's true in the family. A bad dad wrecks the family, wrecks his daughters.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Very true. Let's move into your life story. So we're gonna start at childhood.
Yeah.
Hit your news career, and then we got a whole bunch of rabbit holes to go down.
Great.
But where'd you grow up?
I was born in San Francisco, California, Children's Hospital, same hospital Jerry Garcia was born in, not to brag, in 1969 spring. We moved to Los Angeles. My mother's from San Francisco, my father's from Boston. Moved to LA. My dad worked for ABC News in Los Angeles. When I was like 6, my mom split and ultimately moved to France, I guess. I never saw her again.
Wait, hold on. She just left?
She left.
6?
She left, yeah, when I was 6. Boo-hoo, poor me.
How many,
I have one brother who I'm very close to, have always been extremely close to, my best friend. And who's a year and a half younger than I am. So we grew up with our dad, and we moved.
What did your mom, did she tell you she was leaving, or you just came home, she was gone, or?
My dad worked for ABC News, and had been quite successful as a reporter, and he got into some dispute with management, which is a family trait. And basically, actually it was pretty funny. He, in television you get free clothes from the wardrobe department. And so you get measured for suits every year or whatever. And he never got his suits. And so he called the tailor. I'll never forget this when this happened. I was in 1st grade, and he calls the tailor. He's like, "Are my suits coming? Where are my suits?" And the guy, 6 weeks ago. And the guy's like, "Actually, I've been told not to make your suits by management because you're getting fired." That's television for you. You learn from the tailor you're getting fired. So he got fired. And he was like, he got a job in San Diego at a CBS affiliate in San Diego called KFMB. And we moved, my brother and I and our houseman and the dogs, our Springer Spaniels, we got in the car and drove to San Diego. My mom just wasn't there. And we lived in a hotel for a while. And for quite a while. And then we moved to a town called La Jolla, which is a little bit north of San Diego, very pretty town. And when I was in 1st grade. And I lived with my dad and my brother and our dogs. And we had the best time. I mean, it was sad.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I don't talk about it very often because it sounds like, oh, I had such a hard life, but I really had a great life. And I love my dad. I worship my dad, and I still do. And I see him every day, and I love him. And my brother, I always love my brother. So we had a really happy life, and quite eccentric, but quite happy. And then
what would your dad say when you would ask?
He never attacked her. He never attacked her. He would, she just kind of split, and she, whatever. I don't want to get into the woe is me stuff. I don't think she liked us for some reason. I never, not clear, but she was pretty clear about that. And she was involved in drugs and alcohol and stuff, and was quite. She was a sculptor, so she was pretty eccentric. And our family was definitely not like every other family at all. But I thought in a good way, but definitely more kind of cerebral, and we didn't play sports or go to sports games or watch television. We would just have extremely long dinners with random people always in the house and talk about books and ideas and the news and all this stuff. And it was just a different time. Everybody smoked cigarettes. Everyone, liked art. And it was a kind of world that just absolutely does not exist now. But I really enjoyed it. But there was, a high level of eccentricity was tolerated, and I think that's very good. It makes creativity possible. It was just different attitudes, very, very different attitudes, all gone now. But it was cool. I had a wonderful childhood, actually, and I became extremely close to my father and my brother. And my mother was from a very affluent family. My father was an orphan. and who had lived at the Home for Little Wanderers in Boston as a child, you know, in the early 40s. And so
Your mother came from a
affluent family, and my father was a completely self-made guy who, you know, never finished high school and joined the Marine Corps at 17 and was a very tough human being, like actually tough, not fake tough, but legit tough. But a very decent guy and a hyper-intense intellectual, and it was self-educated, but with the motivation that comes from knowing that you didn't graduate high school, he went to jail. And so he was like, he'd keep a book on the dashboard of his car for red lights. Like, he's that guy. And just very intellectually engaged. I mean, he could sit at a table, and often did, you know, smoking cigarettes, recounting a book he had just read, like in detail. And my brother and I would just be spellbound. And we would have, I mean, I'm not joking, we would have like 6-hour dinners, not kidding. And it was just great. It was great. And a very outdoorsy person, loved camping and nature and hunting and fishing, and very much about nature and dogs and books. So that was a wonderful childhood. He got remarried to an amazing woman who just passed away, and really a beautiful soul. And
how old were you when he got remarried?
10, maybe, something like that. I think I was 10. And he very much reserved the right to raise us. He had very eccentric opinions. Not eccentric, he turned out to be right about almost everything. But he had a deep distrust of school. He was an actual intellectual, like is an actual intellectual, like with deep knowledge, but a free thinker. And he thought that conformity made you dumb, and you should be free to explore like what the truth is. And so he was totally opposed to school, like completely opposed to school. Very unimpressed that I went to college. Never, I don't think he knew the name. He paid the bill, which I was grateful for, but he never like asked like, what college do you go to, or what's going on in college, you know? It was like the unspoken thing. It was almost like I was like, you know, I don't know, having some creepy sex thing in my life. Just don't talk about it. He was not impressed by anything faddish or anything, you know, groupthink. The herd instinct just made him sick. He was like a true individual. Probably not right about everything, but right about a lot of the big things. And completely unafraid to take, well, really of anything, but physically unafraid. He was like the only dad in La Jolla who would like, you know, like punch you out at a red light if you got. He was that guy, just like not, you know, that didn't happen where we lived. It was a very affluent community and a lot of polite people, and my father was, you know, not someone to trifle with, but very, very kind to my brother and me. Very kind. Totally tribal in his thinking. Like, there's our family and there's everyone else. Like, total mafia outlook. Like, complete. Not in a bad way. Like, not want to get in anyone's business, but like, fuck with the family, you die. Yeah. That kind of attitude, like it's us versus everybody else, which was a great way, actually, to grow up. So, anyway, he got remarried, and then in 1984, I think. And then when I was a child, I went to boarding school on the East Coast when I was 14. I went to boarding school. He sent me to boarding school in New England, where he was from, because he was like, get out of this fake inherited money world, go be cold. Well, I went to another inherited money world, of course, in New England, but we had a house in Maine where we spent the summer, and he believed in like cold climate, hard work. He's extremely Swedish, so like, you know, it's good to be around snow and pine trees, and like you should suffer, you know, that kind of stuff. So went to boarding school, and then he ran for mayor of San Diego for some reason and lost. And then immediately after that went to work for the U.S. government and worked in and around the U.S. government for like the next 35 years.
What was he doing in government?
He went in to run something called Voice of America. And the idea was he'd been a journalist. This was in the Reagan administration. And this was our sort of voice to the world. Voice of America was like the, you know, big radio broadcaster. It was really an instrument of the intel agencies, which I didn't quite realize at the time. But so he ran that for years. And
was this Mockingbird by chance?
I mean, I don't know. What's so funny is you don't get things as a child, and I so revered and respected and do revere and respect my father that, you know, I don't know. But I have no idea, but I know that when the Iran-Contra thing happened, he got caught up in that. Sort of. I mean, I was in boarding school, I guess, when that happened. But I remember reading, and it's like my dad's name, like, what? You know, broadcasting messages on behalf of the Contras or something like that. And I remember saying to my father, like, what? And he's like, oh, it's all bullshit. Probably not all bullshit. Whatever. Anyway, just a wonderful man. I had lunch with him every day of my every week of my adult life. I always had lunch with him every Friday. And we'd gamble for lunch. Always bring dice and we'd gamble and ate at the same place, same table for decades. And just a great guy, very earthy, extremely powerful life force. The one story that sort of, not to go on about it, I've often thought about writing a book about it because it was so unusual. And I was like, I don't want to do that because it's too personal. But this was my father in one short story. When I was in college, I think I was a junior in college, he had been snoring, and my stepmom said, you're snoring. My father's a big man, you know, prone to overeating, just like me. And he was snoring really bad. And she's finally like, you gotta go to the, there's something going on with your snoring. And he hates going to the doctor. He's like, the only one of his friends still alive, he never went to the doctor. Smoked unfiltered cigarettes his whole life. He's like, he's fine, I'm fine. You know, he's that guy. So he finally goes to the doctor, and the doctor looks down his throat and goes, holy shit, and gives him an emergency tracheotomy in the examining room because he had such a huge tumor in his throat. And he was such a heavy smoker, they're like, you got throat cancer. Well, it turned out to be tuberculosis that he caught in China, but they didn't know that at the time. So I get a call at school, your father has throat cancer, you know, and he's in surgery. So I'm in school, I was in college, yeah, I was in Connecticut. I fly down to Washington, I get to the hospital, just as my father's getting out of the recovery room. My stepmom's there, was really the kindest person I've ever met, and really a great person, he really loved her. And so he's getting wheeled out, and he's in this gurney, and he's got, of course, he can't talk, he's got a hole in his throat, he's recovering from surgery, and my brother and I are there, like, you know, trying to keep from, you know, like crying in front of my dad, but like, her dad's dying, you know, he's got throat cancer, holy shit. It was out of nowhere. And he sees us, and he, you know, was like, hey guys, you know, like, we can't talk, hey guys. And he looks down and he sees his wife. And he sees her, I'm watching his face, he sees her butt, and he's reached out and grabs her butt. He's just an animal. It's like he's just learned that he's gonna like die of throat cancer, but he just couldn't control himself. And I saw that, and I thought, and I said to my brother, it's like, that man is the strongest life force of anyone I've ever met in my, he's just, you can't defeat him. Doesn't matter. I mean, he could be in prison and he'd still be the same man. So I don't know why, that the strength of spirit required to grab your wife's butt when you get out of throat surgery. I just think it's just an incredible illustration of who he is. So anyway, I admire him.
What kind of stuff were you into as a kid? Were you into sports or outdoors?
I love the outdoors, and we went, you know, we spent the summer in this little town in Maine. So weird that we did that. We're the only people who went from La Jolla, California to Western Maine, which is not fashionable at all. But my father had gone there as a child on hunting trips with his adopted father, so he liked it, so we went there. But we lived on the beach, so I was into surfing. I was passionately into marijuana, you know, as you are when you grow up in Southern California in the 70s and 80s. I think it's stupid now, but I was into it then. I loved reading. There was a huge premium on reading in our house, like read books. I remember my father once said of my mother, that, like, the one criticism he leveled against my real mother, who was smart, actually after she died in France, I didn't know she lived in France, but she died, and there was all this drama happened after she died, but the point is, I got a couple of like correspondence from her, whatever. I really didn't know much about her, but I got all this correspondence. This was 13 years ago when she died. And I was like, wow, she was really smart. I didn't quite realize that. And so I said to my father, like, wow, I got all this correspondence from her real mother, and she's a pretty high IQ person. Wow, I didn't know that. And he goes, yeah, she read magazines.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
It's like the most like she read magazines. Like what a waste. You know what I mean? She read magazines. Like it was the New Yorker, but it's just a magazine. Like, people read books. Like serious people read books. So, and I'm the beneficiary of his library, which was vast, and the word eclectic is overused, but it literally is eclectic. It's like crazy. And just every interesting book ever actually read and underlined, like these are not decorative books, these are like books he read.
Wow.
On every topic, and not just books, but like transcripts of trials. He's very interested in a couple of topics, and really like American Indians. He's really interested in the Indian Wars and on different tribes. He knew a lot about it. Passionately interested in the Lincoln assassination for some reason, and had the transcripts of, Mrs. Surratt's trial. And like actually the transcript bound from 1865, and just a lot of stuff like that. And he's in a more honest world, he would qualify, I think, as a historian. But anyway, yeah, she read magazines. So funny.
Wow.
That's the meanest thing. She was like addicted to drugs and she abandoned her family. She read magazines.
If I remember correctly, you were trying to get into CIA.
Yeah, as Vladimir Putin reminded me. I don't know how you knew that. Yeah, I applied to CIA when I was a senior in college.
What did you want to do for the CIA?
Operations. Yeah, it was completely different organization. Well, who knows what it was, actually? I don't know. I mean, I was operating on the basis of a lot of my father's friends served as operations officers. Some really wonderful guys, who I guess I probably shouldn't name, but who were always at our house and were just legit interesting people and smart people. But, everything changed after 9/11. You worked for CIA, so I don't need to tell you. But I think that the explicit paramilitary part was much smaller. And these were like spycraft guys, a lot of them probably involved in, who knows what they're involved in, but they were definitely literate and smart and interesting. And they lived in all these countries, and we had just traveled a lot. And my dad was really interested in the world. And, we never like went to Florence or something. We always would go to weird places. And he was just interested in how people lived in different cultures and learning about them. And he's just interested in everything. Amazing teacher. So these guys had lived that life. They'd been there when this happened or that happened, or you'd been, chief of station in Jerusalem or something. It's like these guys have really lived a life. And I thought, I want to live that life. I want an interesting life. That's what I wanted. I want an interesting life. And we grew up in a pretty affluent circumstances, not crazy private plane rich or anything, but, I didn't worry about money. That wasn't really a factor. No one ever talked about money, which is one of the privileges of having it. You don't talk about it. And in our culture, you don't talk about it at all under any circumstances. So I didn't really think about money at all. I was just like, I want an interesting life. So I applied to CIA, and that whole application process this was 1990. And I should just say, for the record, that I had no idea what the CIA was, actually. And I didn't believe any of I think Kermit Roosevelt actually lived right down the street from us.
Are you kidding?
No.
Oh, man, that's cool.
But I didn't know. I mean, but that's just the world you live in Northwest D.C. Like, I never thought any of it was bad. And the people who did think it was bad were like these fervid left-wing America haters. And I was like, fuck those people. Like, they're all Noam Chomsky type. They don't know anything. And I was a child, and I was just dismissive. And the Cold War was going on. So it was really a binary. It was like, are you for the U.S. or the Soviet Union? Well, that was not a hard one for us. We're for the United States. And so when I applied to CIA, and I've taken a lot of crap, including from Putin, like, oh, you're from a CIA family. Well, yeah, obviously my father worked in conjunction with CIA. I mean, that's what that is. And I tried to join the CIA, but I'm not being false about it. I'm a sworn enemy of the CIA at this point, no doubt about that. I've been the target, actually, repeatedly. So, I'm not ashamed to say any of this. I'm not some secret agent or something. And I would have been terrible as an operations officer because I'm not good at keeping secrets. I hate bureaucracy. I just wanted a life that was interesting. I wanted to see stuff. I didn't want to run anything. I still don't. I just wanted to see stuff. I wanted to end my life at the table with my children and say, I was there. I was actually there when that happened, and it was interesting. And like the version you've heard is not quite right because I was there. That's what I wanted out of my life. And I got it. But in another way. So I got dinged from CIA for drugs. Let's be totally honest. I had done cocaine within the last calendar year because I was in college and I was like an idiot. And lots of drugs, and I did drugs. I wasn't a drug addict, but I did drugs. And the rule was at the time, or at least this is what they told me. Who knows what the truth was? Like we have a rule that if you've done certain drugs within 12 months, you can't join. I personally think that the personality assessment tests, I took a lot of them. I'm sure you've taken these with like 1,000 questions, and you have to answer true or false. Do you remember that?
You got to think about fuzzy bunnies. Past that.
So funny. I'll never forget this going home.
They would literally tell us that, guys. Just think about fuzzy bunnies when they're taking this test.
Those tests are insane. And I took mine at like Georgetown or GW University auditorium with all these. Most of them are military guys actually, trying to move over into operations at CIA. And they told us, they sent me a letter, said bring a number 1 pencil, which was a mindfuck, but I didn't realize that. So I say to my father, I have to bring a number 1 pencil. He's like, well, you better go to the stationery store. We lived in Georgetown, on Wisconsin Avenue, and see if there's a guy walking there. I was like, I'd like a number 1 pencil, please. And I'm like, there is no such thing as a number 1 pencil. So I go home and I say to my father, I'm like, I couldn't get a number 1 pencil. And he's like, well, just try it with a number 2 pencil. So I show up and we sit down in this giant auditorium to take all these tests, and like all the military guys, they're so like, gotta follow the rules. Oh, excuse me, sir, I couldn't find a number 1 pencil, and everyone's like, I couldn't either. And I'll never forget the CIA guy administering the test is like, you couldn't find a number 1 pencil? Okay, well then I guess a number 2 will do. And I do think it was like an elaborate, mindfuck. But anyway, you take all these, you answer these questions, as you know. And I'll never forget, one of them was, and they're repetitive. They ask you the same question in a different form. And one of them was, I am fascinated by fire. I'll never forget that. And I went home and I said to my father, I was like, Pop, one of the questions was, I am fascinated by fire. Like, you'd have to be a fucking lunatic to say yes, because you're clearly a psycho, right? And my father, who knew a lot about this subject, goes, yeah, but the psychos don't know they're psychos. So it reveals, like, through repetition and there's a time limit. You don't have time to think about it. You just have to, like, well, you know all this, of course, but it was amazing. Anyway, I didn't get into CIA, and thank God, I would have been awful, and I don't agree with the mission. So the whole thing would have been terrible. So I'm so grateful I didn't. And then I was getting married, and I didn't have a college degree. I was a senior in college, and I was like, and my father-in-law was a good man with a job. I was like, you need to have a job before you marry my daughter. So I went to my father, as usual, and I was like, and I applied to work in a boarding school in Morocco, and they were like, no. I just wanted to do something interesting. And he's like, you should go into journalism. I did that. I didn't have any credentials, but I could write. I was literate. And I said, okay. So he got me a job at his assistant's wife worked at this magazine. So I got a job as basically a fact checker at this magazine, and I loved it right away. That was August I got back from my honeymoon and went to work. I never really had a job when I went on my honeymoon. I worked at a gas station.
Where'd you meet your wife?
First day of 10th grade at the boarding school that we went to. Her dad was headmaster. And I had been there in 9th grade, and she showed up in 10th grade. We had a switch of headmasters, and I was standing on the quad. I'll never forget. I was like, oh, holy shit, that girl's cute. Wow. And so I was just on that, like, that. Just on that, like, right away. September 23rd, 1984. I'll never forget that. I was like, wow. I was actually dating someone else, but I was like, that's the girl.
Wow.
Yeah.
You remember the day. That's awesome.
September 23rd, 1984. I'll never forget it. And I was like a very non-ideal person. I mean, I'm like kind of an asshole now. I was really an asshole then, like actual. It's like super arrogant, dumb, doing drugs, just being like a complete overbearing jerk. Arrogant, really arrogant, and which is my nature. I try to fight it, but yeah, but we just had this weird chemistry, so it worked.
What you mentioned you were into drugs. You're 22 years sober. Congratulations.
Yeah.
What was it that got you sober? Was it a scare? Did you hit rock bottom?
I didn't really. I mean, I was hosting Crossfire actually at the time, and so I had been successful. Young, and it wasn't really drugs. I mean, I was not, I did a lot of drugs, but that's just because of the world that I was in. Like, that was not, I mean, it's embarrassing to say it now because drugs are so clearly bad, like really bad. And all these people now die of drugs. And that was not the case when I was a kid. Like, drug addicts died of drugs. Junkies died of overdoses, but like no one you'd ever know would ever die of drugs. At this point, I know a lot of people who died of drugs. So it's a different landscape. It's a different attitude. now, so it's embarrassing to say that, but I was not a drug addict. I just was like into adventure and experimenting with stuff, and the world I was in, that was pretty much acceptable. I hate to say it, but it was true. That's just true. So same with cigarette smoking. Cigarette smoking was encouraged. So it was a different time. But it wasn't the drugs, it was that, though, some drugs really wear you out, like cocaine. Not good. And hard to live a productive life if you're like going to bed at 7 a.m. or whatever, which I didn't do a ton, but some. But it was booze. That is what got me. And it was just, just progressive. I was 33. And my wife was pregnant with our 4th child. And I was fairly functional. I did a daily TV show and was fairly well known. Kind of famous, actually, at that point. And so, kind of killing it. But I do think the physiology of it, which I don't understand really, but that's real. Like your body responds to alcohol differently as you age. And I would start to get these hangovers that were debilitating. And then I'm busy. I've got a lot of children. I've got stuff to do. And I would just like not hesitate to have a cocktail at 3 a.m. I just wouldn't. I'm just like a no dick around kind of guy, I guess. And I don't feel good. So like, there's a screwdriver for that. And that's a very bad pattern to get into, obviously. So, but anyway, I quit when I was sitting at my desk on Sunday morning. And at this point, we had got an ice maker in our refrigerator, which we'd never had. And if you're struggling with drinking, don't get an ice maker because it's just too easy. Like where you go and you click the...
Yeah.
And we don't even have one now, actually. I don't know why. We're sort of low tech on kitchen equipment, but whatever. In this one house that we had, we got an ice maker, and I was like, wow, look at that. Clink, 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 clink. And then you could someone taught me about scotch. I knew nothing about scotch. I was always a bourbon guy or whatever, but I sat and drank a quart of scotch with a friend of mine. He's like, scotch is really good. Just drink a quart of it. So we did. We were up in Maine. It didn't matter. It was in the summertime. But then I got back to Washington in late August or mid-August, and I have this job. And then I get home from the job. It's like, click, click, well, I'll try some scotch. And the next thing you know, you're like shit-faced at home. And part of me was like, that's not good. And I had a couple of moments where I lost control, actually at the White House Christmas party in 2001. I got too drunk to talk and stuff like that. It's just embarrassing. But I woke up this one morning at the last day of August 2002, and my wife was 10 days away from giving birth to our 4th child. And I was sitting at my desk, like smoking a cigarette at home, feeling bad. And I just heard this voice. I don't know if it was a voice. It was from God. And it was the clearest possible instruction. If you keep doing this, you will lose your wife and children. And I haven't always been a great husband or father, but I've always wanted to be. I've always really cared a lot. And it's easy to care about people who are, loving and fun to be with, as my family is. So it's not hard, but I have always cared a lot. And I just had this dead certainty that if I kept on this path, I would lose my wife and children. No one had complained about my drinking, really.
What were you doing when you got that voice, when you heard it?
I was sitting at my desk smoking a Camel Unfiltered. I'll never forget it, looking out my window at my lawn and feeling just like enervated and crappy and cloudy, as you do when you're hungover. And I just had this feeling, and I was like, wow, I think I'm an alcoholic. I had lost control. I'm leaving a few things out, nothing dramatic, but I didn't crash a car. But I blacked out a couple of times, which I didn't know what that was, like actually black out. I always hear people say that, but like I didn't remember how I got home from a restaurant, for example, with my college roommate. Or I had a friend over, another college roommate that summer, wonderful guy, his wife and children, just a beautiful family and beautiful people, great people, like not people you'd want to be like snarfing drunk in front of. And I remember sitting in my backyard in Washington and making gin and tonics. I'm quite a good gin and tonic maker. But it's the kind of thing you want to have a couple cocktails with your buddy and his wonderful wife, and they're just really great people. And next thing I know, I'm like shit-faced. I'm like, I don't really actually want to be shit-faced. I can't believe I got shit. Like, what is that? I was losing control.
Mm-hmm.
This is all very... And then some other stuff like that, where I stayed, I had a friend in town, and he's like, let's do a couple wines. And next thing I know, it's like 7 a.m, and I'm like, what? I can't do this shit. Anyway, the bottom line is, I quit. I never had another drink after that, and I went into like not medically serious, but for me, pretty serious withdrawals. And that I was like, what? I'm having alcohol. I knew nothing about this. Okay, I didn't know that there were alcohol withdrawals. Like I just didn't know. You'd think because of my mother, I would know this, but I didn't know anything. And my brother was, a problem drinker also. But I didn't think of myself as a problem drinker. I was like, well, my brother's out of control. He later quit too. But when I started to go into withdrawals from alcohol, like shaking hands, can't sleep, sweating a lot, and I have to host this TV show, and I'm like, I was addicted to alcohol. Holy smokes. Like, how did I not know that? And then, so I never drank again. And unlike most people who quit, or many people who quit, I've never wanted to drink again. I just never, once I got past like the first 6 months, I just felt so much better. I'm so grateful. I've enjoyed being sober a lot. And that's a huge blessing. That's not from me. It's not like I have a especially strong character. I don't. If you put a tray of Fig Newtons right here, you would see how weak I really am. It's just on this one thing, the booze and drugs, it's like, I don't want that at all. And so I never went to AA. I didn't go to AA. I've been to one AA meeting in my life, and it was 3 weeks ago. And it was because Russell Brand, who I really love, was at my house, and he goes to AA all the time. And I said, what do you go to AA? And he's like, I just love the people, and people are so honest. And I said to him, I thought you went to AA to keep yourself from drinking again. Like, you're right on the edge, which I'm not at all. Like, you couldn't force feed me alcohol. Like, I just don't want it. And he's like, no. You go for the beauty of being around truth. And people who are just totally unafraid to say who they really are. And there's something wonderful about that. That's like the best thing there is. That's liberation. Like, that's actual liberation. And I was like, I gotta go to AA. So I went to an AA meeting and I loved it. And I'm going back. I've been traveling and all this stuff, but I ran into a buddy of mine literally on the road, trucks parked next to each other, and he's like, I'm going to AA. And I was like, well, I'm gonna text me. I had to travel, but I was like, when I'm back next week, just text me when you go. I want to go. Whatever. It's not that interesting, but that's my experience of it. I was delivered from that. And I don't know why, but I'm just so grateful. And my brother too. My brother was an actual drinker, like, well, I mean, no more than I was, but he's like way more boisterous and like Swedish than I am. And he's a punch you out guy and a wonderful person. But he woke up one morning, he's like, I'm never drinking again. And he never did. Wow. Almost 20 years ago. So it's like, we both have been so blessed that way.
There's a lot of people out there struggling with addiction and alcoholism. So do you have any words of wisdom for somebody that's looking to make the change?
Well, I was dealing with this morning. Yeah, it's one of the great privilege. No, I there's no formula, right? But rehab doesn't work for most people, of course, at all. It works for some. But I was just giving someone advice about this, which I do a lot because I really care about it. I love sobriety. So I'm in a good place to tell people about it because I really believe it. And I got off so easy. I really did. I got off easy. Oh my gosh. But what I always say is quitting drinking is a huge decision. It's a huge life change. Everything changes when you do that. A. B, it can be extremely painful physically, which nobody ever talks about. They're always like, oh, you drink to whatever. Yeah, for sure. You drink because you're insecure, you're afraid, you're lying, you're a narcissist. Drinking makes you a narcissist. It's all about you, right? But another reason that no one ever mentions that you drink is because you have a physical need for it. It's physical too. So when you quit drinking, I told someone this morning, you need to be prepared for feeling very shitty and very shaky and having your sleep disrupted and feeling like you're gonna have a panic attack at all times. And like, that's all real. And you should just know that going in. And the third thing I always say is that it's so great to be sober because you don't have to lie at all. And there's no shame in that. I always tell my children this, and I really believe it. It's a foundational belief for me that we're not good at lying about ourselves and that everyone already knows who we are. So no matter what it is, whatever the secret is that you're hiding and you think, I'm I'm gay, but no one knows, or, you know, I'm an alcoholic, but no one knows, or I used to smoke secretly, like at my in-laws' house. No one knows. Are you kidding? Everybody knows. Whatever your dumb little secret is that you think is like uniquely horrible, that secret is shared by hundreds of millions of other people on this planet, and has been since the beginning of time. That is our common humanity. It is our basic flaws. And that those things are already known. Everyone already knows you're secretly gay, alcoholic, secret, whatever it is. You're insecure, you know what I mean? You know, you've got a big butt and you're trying to hide it. Like, everyone already knows that. And a lot of them love you anyway. So once you realize that, you're free. I don't have, you know, it doesn't mean you should stop trying to be better, or if you should never stop trying to be better, but you don't need the shame as like so unnecessary. There's almost nothing you could do that would shock me personally, having watched people really carefully for many years. There's no variety of human sin that is shocking at all. They're all sad, but they're not shocking. It's not like, well, you're really plowing new ground there. You banged your sister-in-law, I can't believe it. Seen it, you know what I mean? It's like there's nothing you can do that is shocking, and there are a lot of things you can do that are wrong, of course, but they're not, you can admit everything. You can admit everything. And the people who love you will still love you. And when you know that, it's like you are bulletproof. It's like, what are you going to do to me?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do.
And sobriety gets you there.
I can't think of one thing that changed for the worse when I got sober, and I've only been sober for 2.5 years.
How is it a struggle?
I mean, for me, it wasn't. I kind of told you at breakfast, you know, that it was. I didn't even mean for it to happen. I mean, I used to put away probably 2/5 a day. You know,
2/5?
Yeah, I would wake up
2/5 of liquor.
Yeah, and have mini bottles everywhere, all over my car.
Oh, so you were full blown.
Oh yeah. And
were you able to work?
Yeah. And on pills, and on coke, and on sleeping pills, and I remember going to my therapist and telling her,
"Ooh, that's."
She thought I was trying to kill myself.
For sure.
And so I'd eased my way off of benzos and sleeping pills and painkillers
and you got off benzos alone?
Alone.
It takes
for years.
It takes balls.
I mean, it was.
You probably know Vistaprint for business cards, but did you know we print everything you need to brand your business? We print banners and signs that help you stand out, and must-have merch like tote bags, t-shirts, and hoodies. Right now, new customers can get 25% off with code NEW25, because if you need it, we print it at Vistaprint.com.
I don't even care. I would be working for the agency, and we're all insomniacs, and it was just take whatever the fuck you can just to try to get some sleep. And then it became, then that starts the cycle. But yeah, I kicked that stuff, and then
a lot of people die getting off benzos.
Yeah.
Like alcohol, I think those are the only two categories where withdrawal can kill you. Heroin, no. Crack, no.
Mm-hmm.
Benzos and alcohol can literally kill you and kill a lot of people.
Yeah.
Did you know that? Were you like afraid?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well,
I
good.
didn't know that. Yeah.
Good.
No, I did not. I mean, this was around 2015, and that I started kicking all of that shit, and I had a suicide attempt. Can't believe we're going here, but
I'm not surprised at all with that much.
Yeah.
Partying, yeah.
Parked the car in the garage, left the engine running, reclined the seat back, and was like, let's check out. And it didn't work. Believe it or not. Obviously, I'm sitting here. But so I kicked the booze.
But what was the immediate aftermath of that? Was that like did that shock you back into life? You realized
I didn't believe it. So I woke up in my bedroom in my townhome, and my whole townhome smelled like gas. So I came down the stairs, and there was a pistol that I had gotten out of the safe, which I'd never use, and all my clothes were on the couch in front of the TV, so I think that maybe I was pondering killing myself on the couch, And then...
Oh, you were loaded when you did this.
Oh, yeah. Blacked out.
Of course.
I don't know how I got back from the bar. And then I went to the garage, and I touched the door handle, and it was hot to the touch, and I was like, oh, shit. Maybe there's a fire in there. And so I was like, well, if I open the door, then maybe that'll be it. I'll be done. Well, I opened the door, and that didn't happen, and I walked in, my fucking car was still running. The seat was reclined all the way down. I was like, holy shit, I was still fucked up, but I didn't want to open the garage because my dumb ass thought, well, if a spark flies, this whole place is going up. Now I'm kind of in it, and which is stupid because the pistons are firing in my car. But the car had gotten so hot that the gas tank melted and gas was dripping
way.
Yeah, I'm not shitting you. Gas was I didn't know this at the time, but gas was dripping onto the exhaust, the muffler.
What kind of car?
An Audi. So I opened the garage, turned the car off. I told you I had been in therapy altogether 3.5 years, twice a week. Called my therapist, called Peggy Matthews, the woman I had told you about that had started that nonprofit, and they're like, yeah, you tried to kill yourself. And I was in denial. Yeah. So reason I knew the gas tank melted is when I took off later that day, just to, go get something, my girlfriend at the time followed me to make sure I was all right. And my fucking muffler you could see fire coming off of it. So then she had called me, told me, I looked, and sure as shit, there was gas dripping onto the damn muffler. Yeah, so that started kind of my, let's wake up and, yeah. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. This year has flown by. I can't believe we're already almost halfway through. When life goes fast, it's important to take a moment to celebrate your wins and make plans for the rest of the year. Therapy can help you take stock of your progress and set achievable goals for the next 6 months. Therapy is so helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma. Therapy truly is for everyone. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Take a moment, visit betterhelp.com/Sean today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Sean. History, economics, the great works of literature, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution. Did you study these things in school? Probably not. Or even if you did, maybe it's time for a refresher. Time and technology have changed a lot, and that's why it's important to learn the fundamentals. That's why I'm excited that Hillsdale College is offering more than 40 free online courses in the most important and enduring subjects. You can learn about the works of C.S. Lewis, the stories of the Book of Genesis, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution, the rise and fall of the Roman Republic, or the history of the ancient Christian church with Hillsdale College's online courses, all available for free. That's right, free. I personally recommend you sign up for Ancient Christianity. In this 11-lecture course, you'll study the inspiring stories of Christ and the first 4 centuries of Christianity. The course is self-paced, so you can start whenever and wherever. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/SRS to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/SRS to register.
Zaxby's just out Phillied the Philly with our signature crispy chicken fingers, sauteed peppers and onions, garlic aioli, and melty cheese. Your move, Philly. Who's got the sauce? Zaxby's.
So that's one of the wildest stories I've heard, actually, what you just said. That you didn't even know that you did it because you were blacked out.
Mm-hmm.
What effect, like once you realized what had happened and you call your therapist and she confirms the obvious, what the evidence suggests, like, what effect did that have on you?
I mean, never realized I was capable of suicide, you know, and so I called my therapist, I called Peggy, I called my best friend, Dave Rutherford, who lived down the road from me, also a former CLCA guy, and still in denial, still fucked up, you know what I mean? I mean, I haven't even slept it off. And, but, you know, you know, I can't let my dad down.
That's the spirit.
That's always been like, that's what carried me through all the shit that I've been through, getting into the SEAL teams. I could never, like, I felt like I let my dad down so many times in childhood, up to leaving, just from being a fucking turd, that I couldn't let him down anymore. And that just stuck with me from 18 to today. And
that's a great motivator.
Yeah. But anyways, you know, moving forward.
Wait, can I ask you one question? So you said you didn't think you were capable of that, which is like a horrifying thing to realize about yourself. I've realized that about myself on different levels. I didn't think I would ever do something like that. I just did. But where do you think that came from? Do you think the impulse to destroy yourself came from within, or do you think it was something from outside you that entered you?
Both. I think it was both. I mean, there was a lot of things that I didn't think I was capable of doing that were all happening around this time, you know, and you know, I kind of told you about my lifestyle and living in Colombia, and there was a lot of shame. You know, I was going through a lot of shame and trying to create a new identity after leaving the agency and the SEAL teams and starting from nothing. So that was all in there. And I mean, we talked about it this morning at breakfast, you know, I mean, it's like athletes, pro athletes, they get done and it's like, well, now what the fuck am I going to do? And that's how I felt. And I felt very unaccomplished again. And it just really like bothered me. There was a lot of processing that was going on at that time. But yeah, then so I had kicked everything eventually within a couple months, and vodka was gone. I had switched to wine, and
the old switch to
the
wine.
old switcheroo,
Been there.
and then years later, I went and did psychedelic treatment, and I didn't even go down there for that, and I just came out of it, and I haven't had another drop of alcohol since. It just
in one day.
It's like in a week. I did ibogaine, 5-MeO DMT. I came home, and it's that experience almost. It's like it showed you everything that's poison in your life. It was like a new intuition that I had developed over the course of a week of just, I guess you'd call it healing, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it just.
Did you go by yourself?
No, I wanted to go by myself, and then I went to. It was very private though. I didn't want anybody around, you know, that knew me, and because I didn't know it was going to come out either. And but yeah, it's like it showed me toxic people in my life, not to be afraid to say no to people anymore, and alcohol, Adderall is the one thing I kept on after my suicide attempt, and even like, I guess I can't say caffeine, but coffee, like I haven't had any coffee. And then cannabis, I would use to sleep, kick that for about 6 months. But that's the only one that didn't stick, was the cannabis. And, you know, sometimes I need that to sleep. So yeah, that's my journey to sobriety.
Were you afraid? I assume you didn't have like an extensive history of hallucinogenic experiences?
No.
So were you afraid that you would freak out?
Yeah, I did a lot of drugs, and I was always scared of psychedelics and stuff that makes you hallucinate, because you don't know what's going to arise. But I had hit this. When I did it, I felt like I had pretty much conquered the veteran PTSD traumatic. Like I had reinvented myself successfully, and the new problem for me was I had just had my son. He was about 4 or 5 months old, I believe. And I just like business just kept creeping into my mind. And I was like, man, I just want to fucking be in the moment with my wife and kid. I don't want to be thinking about who my next guest is or how am I gonna, I just didn't want to, I wanted to be able to shut that down. And I started getting real panicky because as the show's growing, people see that, and then people want to be around you, and not all those people are good, and a lot of people want to fucking use you, and hey,
Oh, really?
I know I haven't talked in 20 years, but now I want to be your best friend again. Hey, how's it going? You know, like all that shit just started getting to me, and I felt super fucking guilty. Like, man, I'm sorry. Like, I cannot shout out another nonprofit. I can't shout out another business. Like, I do everything I can to bring awareness to like good shit and businesses and lift veteran businesses on my show, and like that's what I can do. Other than that, like, you're just taking time from my family, but I always felt guilty saying that, and which is weird because I didn't have somebody. I never had somebody like Rogan to amplify my business. I had to do this shit by my fucking self. But I know how hard it is, and so I wanted to help guys elevate their business by bringing exposure to them with this show. But then it just, nothing's ever enough, you know, and you feel guilty, like saying,
and resentful if you're being
sorry.
used.
Yeah, and so I did that, and it got me back in the moment with my family. It gave me it gave me like this new ability to be like, yeah, I'm not doing that. You know, I'm sorry. Like, and it made me realize, like, Sean, they don't give a fuck about you.
No.
They just care about what you can do
That's
for
right.
them. And if you can't do it, guess what? They're going to go to the next person. And then they're going to go to the next person. And then it's not about you. It's just what you can give them. And most of the time. And so it helped me, like, come to peace with a lot of that stuff in business, and then all the alcohol. Funny, I have a bar over here, but
I do too. I have a huge bar.
But
Everywhere.
yeah, you know, it
You have a
helped.
huge bar. I didn't even notice that. I'm so tuned out from alcohol that I don't really notice. That's
Yeah,
weird.
I get a lot of shit about that because I'm always talking about sobriety, but you know, it's
Well, it's a measure of how little control it has over you.
exactly.
I can't watch someone smoke a cigarette without my mouth watering.
Really.
No, it's been 10 years. Yeah, 10 years today. I quit 10 years today.
Congrats.
Thank you. And I've lost interest. I tried to smoke a cigarette last year. I thought I'll start smoking again. Why do I care? Because I do love smoking, but I didn't want to, actually, at all. But for some reason, if I watch someone smoke a cigarette, I'm like, oh, it's so cool. It's so diseased, but I feel that way. It's Pavlovian.
Yeah. But let's get back to you. Enough. I don't like talking about me, but
That was wonderful. I'm so glad that you did, actually.
Well,
That's
thank you.
wonderful. I do think, as I often say to people around me, the one person I know I don't trust is me. And I think it's important to just say that. And like and I did do hallucinogens as a kid. I didn't have any positive experience at all. I didn't learn anything other than the value of sanity. But one thing I did learn was, for sure I learned at like 14 or 15, was there's a lot of stuff floating around inside you that I personally don't have any interest in being in touch with. Because it's, but I think it's important to know, or to have some sense of what you're capable of. Not be ashamed of it, but just know. Like, under certain circumstances. And the one thing that drives me insane is when people are like, I would never do that. Well, I think whatever it is, you would do that, you know, under certain circumstances. Don't lie about yourself or to yourself, you know?
That's a damn good point.
Well, I think it's a blessing to know that and to survive something like that. why did you survive? I mean, I'm sure you've pondered this a lot, but.
Oh yeah, I chalk it up to God and
Amen.
and Jesus and which we talked about that at breakfast.
Yeah.
You know, and there's all these weird, I used to call them coincidences. You know?
Yeah, I don't know.
Now I don't call them coincidences. I think it was just how I'm supposed to play out.
I agree with that strongly.
So
that is the one cool thing about making it past 40, is you start to see how non-random everything is. You know, when you're a kid, it really is like driving fast at night. There's just like lights going past you, and it's hard to interpret what they are, and like everything's just happening, and like for the first time. But with age, I mean, the downside is you do have to wake up to take a leak. Like, that's real, I can tell you. But the upside is so much better than the downside. You like, at least at this stage of my life, you start to see like coincidences. Really, I don't think so. It doesn't mean you're a conspiracy nut. It's just like you notice patterns.
yeah,
Yeah.
they aren't coincidences.
No. That's such a childish thing to tell yourself. You don't realize how childish it is because you're a child. But with age, you're like, okay, kids. And that's why young people, they can't deal with that, actually. Even the open-minded ones. Certainly it's true of me. When I was younger, I was like, conspiracy nut, crazy. You know what I mean? Oh, Kennedy was assassinated as part of a plot. You know, it's like, okay. I didn't believe any of that. UFOs, whatever. But you learn the hard way, or you learn inevitably, in any case with age, that how little you understand, how unreliable you are, how narrow your field of vision is. You learn a lot, and it's good to know.
Yeah. It's I would recommend that psychedelic treatment to everyone. It's so powerful. I've seen it change so many lives too.
Well, it's hard to argue with the fruit the tree bears.
Yeah.
Man, I had the opposite experience. I was like, I'm never doing that again.
Yeah. I think it all comes down to intentions.
Well,
with that
100%. And children should not be taking hallucinogenic drugs. Like, what? Again, it's just time and place. It's just in different time, different place, different attitudes. And people don't understand how much things have changed. Even I forget, like the current, and I'm not even judging in either direction. I'm just saying, like, the current attitudes that we have as of, mid-May 2024 have evolved to this point. These are not the attitudes that we had 20 years ago or 40 years ago. They're just not. They don't bear any resemblance to those attitudes. So things do change a lot. And when you're marinating in it, it's the frog in the hot water metaphor. You're like, you don't feel it, but you look back and you're like, really? How did people do stuff like that? Because everyone thought it was fine. But they did. Or there was a tacit agreement not to talk about it or whatever. But attitudes have changed so much in this country that you can't even talk about it, because it's like, it doesn't sound, first of all, it doesn't sound real. And it's just horrifying by current standards. But that I have lived it, so I can say we have very different attitudes than we used to have, for good and bad.
Yeah. All right, so back to you. You got into journalism.
Yeah.
When did you really see your career just start to...
Well, I've never had a career or thought of myself as having a career. I don't think that now. I never will think that. I'm not a career person, and I reject the whole idea of careers. And I wasn't raised like that. No one had a career. It's like we just didn't think that way. It's just like, are you doing something interesting or not? That was just kind of the only measure. And do you think it's meaningful? Do you enjoy doing it? So I have always felt that way. I have had a lot of different jobs within journalism, like almost pretty much every job you could have. And I've been better at some than others and enjoyed some more than others, but they've all been branches of the same tree. And my views on it have changed a lot. I began just because of my father, and my great-grandfather was a well-known journalist also. So I really felt like, well, this is what I was made to do, and it's honorable. No one's more honorable than my father, so this is inherently honorable. Bring information to people, being their eyes and ears, and in some cases their voice. That's like, what's better than that? Like, there's nothing to be ashamed about in what I do. I've always thought that my whole life. And then you look around and you're like, every other person who does this job is a total piece of shit, actually. And I've concluded that because it's true.
When did you realize that?
Oh, 2016.
Okay.
When the world changed.
Yeah.
And you hate to give Trump credit for it. I love Trump personally, but he's not worthy of that credit. There are a lot of things going on, and he was the embodiment of a lot of different things. We're all sort of people, but we're also symbols, kind of. And that's true of him as well. But whatever, everything changed that year, and particularly the world that I lived in, which was permanent Washington. I mean, I moved there at 15 or 16, and in 2016 I was 47, so that's a lifetime. And I had, strong views about a million different things. I was paid to have strong views, and they came to me naturally. But one thing I never really did was question the foundations of the system. I questioned neocon foreign policy in 2002 when I went to Iraq to see the outcome of this thing I had advocated for, and that changed my view completely. But my views on the whole system were sort of in place from childhood up until 2016 to an embarrassing degree. I just didn't understand that a lot of the things that I was living around and participating in were really wrong. And I heard people say that, but I thought they were dumb. Like, what do you know? You don't live here. I live here. I raised my kids here. Like, this is my city. I know everybody. I know the city, like the physical city and the culture of the city. I knew it really well, and I loved it, and I thrived there. And I came there with, like, no record of success or college degree or, like, anything impressive. And I did fine. I sent my kids to private school, and I was, fairly successful, and waiters and valet parkers are nice to me, and, like, I just sort of live a comfortable, happy life in a really beautiful place. The residential parts of Northwest DC are really beautiful. And not that expensive, actually. It's just a nice life. Nice people. I loved it, and I defended it relentlessly for decades. And then in 1 year, I came to see a lot of it, and it wasn't about Trump. It was about the reaction that he provoked. It was so unreasonable and defensive, and low. It was low. And none of the things that they claimed to believe in, they actually believed in. It was purely self-protection. They couldn't defend the way things worked. Trump was not especially articulate in diagnosing the problems at all. He didn't understand the problems. He wasn't from there. I'm from there. Like, I know what the problems are. Or I thought I did. But Trump would say things, and they would freak out. And they would refuse to give a legitimate answer. This is my neighbors I'm talking about, and my friends, and the whole city. And I was like, I'd never seen anything like it. I lost all respect. I was like, you're really smart people. These are high IQ people. These are achievers. These people went to, the top schools, which I did not go to, but I'd certainly been around it a lot, long enough to lose respect for it. But these are capable people, and also nice people who love their children and are in mostly successful marriages and make sure their lawns are mowed, and, like, they're not bad people. They're good people. They don't spray graffiti. They're not jumping the turnstiles. They're not raping old ladies. Like, these are the pillars of our society, and they can't answer basic questions like, why are we doing it this way? And they refuse to. And they attacked him in very unreasonable ways without even rebutting his critique. And I have no respect for that at all. Not as a conservative or even an American, just as a man who's got rational faculties. I'm like, that's not good enough, actually. I catch you doing something and you attack me, you don't even answer my charge. You're disgusting to me. And I notice this on many different levels: immigration, NATO. I never questioned NATO a single time. My dad worked with NATO. It's like, NATO, they defend us from the Soviets. And I never one time thought, well, wait a second. The Soviet Union collapsed on my honeymoon, which was August of 1991. I was in Bermuda, in Tuckerstown, and it collapsed. I remember reading it on the beach at the Mid-Ocean Club in the New York Times International Herald Tribune Digest or whatever. Wow, a failed coup, it collapsed. That was 1991. This was 2016. I'm not good at math, but a long time later, and we still have this defense alliance to prevent the Soviets from invading Germany. When the Soviets don't exist and Russia's not going to invade Germany, doesn't want to. What's the point of NATO? Which is a totally fair question, which I'd never thought of. And Trump, in his, like, autistic ways, like, why do we have NATO? Holy shit. People went crazy. Well, you Putin tool or whatever. It's like, no, I never mentioned Putin. Why do we have NATO? Like, what's the answer? Answer the fucking question. And they couldn't. And that right there, I'd never had a single opinion about NATO other than NATO good. Not one opinion. I didn't know much about NATO. And it was the defenders of NATO's inability to defend NATO that to me, it sounds obscure, but it's not obscure, it's central. I didn't know that, I now do. But that to me was a turning point in my life. I was like, why can't you answer the question? Why are you getting mad? I have a lot of children, so I'm familiar with these phenomena, right? Did you know what I mean? You ask a straightforward question, I demand a straightforward answer, period. And if you're lying to me, the question becomes, why? Why are you lying? Why are you attacking me? I didn't do anything. Why are we threatening to kill Julian Assange or trying to put Ed Snowden in prison?
Yeah.
You know, you're the criminal, actually. He's the one who told me that you were a criminal. He's not the criminal. You are. That's my opinion about life, not just about the U.S. government. Anyway, so that completely changed my view. And because Trump was involved, who, again, I just say it again because I mean it, I love Trump personally. I know him quite well and have for, long before he ran for president, because I was in the media. And I've always enjoyed him, and I do to this day. But it was not about Trump. It was much deeper than that. And it was very easy to be like, oh, you're a Trump sycophant. Well, of course, I'm not a sycophant to anybody. My wife, I'm an enthusiastic sycophant. Fine. That's allowed. But I'm not an ass kisser, and I never have been. So that's not a fair response. The question hangs in the air. What's the point of NATO? And a million other questions. Why not have a border wall? Or whatever. And they had no answer for any of it, and they were wildly defensive. In a period of just a few months, I lost all respect for them and all desire to live in that city, which was shocking because I'm on the record. I can just tell you what my views were, and I expressed them a lot in print and on television. This is a great city with great people. We make mistakes, and Head Start doesn't really work, and I got it. The federal government's too big, I agree. But fundamentally, these are people who are trying their best, and they're pretty impressive people. And they make mistakes, and these programs last too long. But, they're not evil, okay? They're trying hard. They work hard, and they're smart. And in a few-month period, I was like, actually, none of that's true. They're not good people at all. Because now we all know that this whole enterprise is bullshit, and they refuse to get better. They refuse to admit it. And as a former alcoholic, I know the process of just admit it. Just admit it. I'm kind of a loser. It's all right. You can say that because it's true and everyone knows it already. So just admit it and get better. They refused. They're still defending the Iraq War. They're still defending the indefensible Vietnam War. Still pretending we didn't know the Japanese were going to attack Pearl Harbor. Like, there's too many lies. Like, I can't deal with this many lies, actually. And it's very unhealthy to live in a society that is defined by lies. It corrodes your soul. It's bad for you. You go to hell, actually. You're living in hell when you live that way. And all of this came to me in this short period of time, and I couldn't quite articulate it, but I felt it so strongly it affected my sleep. And it really just changed my life forever. And so I would say, and for the better, for the happier, but it's a burden to have all of your pre-existing beliefs explode in a short period of time. It's like, wow. It's like being kicked out of a cult. You're like, I can't believe I live there. You know what I mean?
I think a lot of us know what you mean at this point.
Well, and I have to say, I know you don't like to talk about yourself, but it's especially relevant to you and men like you who went and, were asked to risk your lives and to kill other human beings and to really give up everything for the sake of this thing. And the disillusionment that I have noticed in men like you who've really done a lot for this enterprise and then come to the obvious conclusion that it's not exactly what it seems. I can't imagine living with that. I honestly can't, and I sort of get the suicide rate. I'm just being honest. I get it. I mean, how much of that, I know this is a very complicated subject that you're deeply involved in, but how much of the despair and up to and including suicide comes from guys realizing, wow, maybe that wasn't worth it?
It's a hard question to answer because there's so much going on.
Yeah, I believe
you know what
that.
I mean. It definitely plays a role, but it's not the whole role.
I believe that.
There's just they're now calling, especially for like special operations guys that have just done it over and over. Like we were talking about in my interview with Tom Spooner, guy's done over 1,000 hits. Meaning he's hit 1,000+ targets. I mean, 1,000?
I think it's totally disgusting to do that to anybody, to ask any man to do that. That's too much. I'm sorry.
And then they kick you out. But it's what you did, it's how you did it, it's addiction to adrenaline, it's culture of being in that life. It's a very toxic fucking culture. It's the competitiveness that's ingrained in you from the time you show up day one, week one of training. It's who's the fastest runner, who's the fastest swimmer, who's the best shot, who's killed the most people, who's gone on the most ops, who's gone on the most high profile ops, who's got the most jumps, it's all that all the time. Every day you have to prove yourself to be there, which we had talked, at breakfast about egomaniacs in my community. And I've thought a lot about this, and I think that's where it stems from. I think it is the competitive nature is ingrained in you, and striving for perfection on day one, week one of training when you're going to become a special operator, though. And
I do. That's so clearly true and nicely put. You obviously thought about it a lot. I would just revise something that I said at breakfast, which was to describe people like that as egomaniacs or narcissists. I do think this is so obvious, it's just coming to me in the last few years, but like egomania is really insecurity masked. People who are comfortable with themselves, who really are deeply, first of all, you can feel it immediately. If someone is actually kind of content inside, it conveys it's a smell, and I can smell it like that. And it's the opposite of egomania. People like that do not, like the man you're talking about, Tom Spooner, is that correct? So I watched that. That guy, just through the screen, I could feel that man's like has achieved a high level of contentment or peace, or he's wrestled with things and settled a lot of things inside him. So I could just feel that coming off just on the screen. I could feel that. I don't know if that's true. I don't know him. I never met him, but
that's
was
true.
I got that vibe right through my phone watching that, because I think it's that obvious. And it is the opposite of the way that people we describe as egomaniacs behave, which is constantly reminding you how great they are. Well, someone who actually thinks he's done an okay job or is at peace inside is never going to remind you that he's great, because it doesn't occur to him. He's focused on you, or whatever. He doesn't need to do that. Like, what? Yeah. You're compensating. You feel like shit if you're doing that, actually. And competition makes you feel bad, of course. Am I actually the fastest? I don't know. That's why I have to tell you that I am.
Yeah.
And it's sad when you start to see it that way. I don't like egomaniacs. I don't like people who can't stop talking about how great they are. I actually hate that more than almost anything. But in the last few years, I've decided, like, no, you should feel sad for people like that. And famous people, and SEALs, let's just be honest, are famous people. They're celebrities in our culture. They are universally loved and respected. I mean, that's just true. It was this kind of obscure thing that, like, President Kennedy thought up, but now it's like a huge part of our culture. They're Hollywood celebrities, basically.